Hey guys, welcome back. If you notice a different scenery behind me, we are doing a senior portrait shoot that's going on for 2 weeks. So I don't have all the equipment here, so we're just going to make this work for now. But I did have 10 Q&As I wanted to go over with you guys. So let's get started on that. Now these are questions that new photographers are going to be asking. Number one is, how do I get the blurry background? Well, you're going to need to set your f-stop as low as it'll go. So if you want to go over to aperture priority and your lens goes down to 2.8, set it at 2.8. If it goes down to 1.8, set it at 1.8, and then let your camera adjust the ISO and the shutter speed. That will help you get the blurry background outside. So if you're outside, like I said, aperture priority, set it as low as it'll go and let the camera set everything else. That'll help you get the blurry background. Now when you start trying to put in a flash into your image outside to keep shadows out of the face, it's a little more complicated than that. But to start off, to get the blurry background, aperture priority, set it as low as it'll go, and that'll get you started. Number two, why is my subject soft and out of focus? Well, you need to focus on the eyeball. So if you've got a DSLR that's got the spot meters on the inside, roll that spot meter so that it's right on the eyeball to focus on it. If you've got a mirrorless camera, you can just touch the eyeball and it'll focus on it. You want a real small section so that you can get real specific to focus on the eyeball. That will keep your subject in focus and make it look sharper. Which lens should I buy first? Well, I would suggest, as I suggest to everybody, get a 50mm 1.8. Most all manufacturers, Nikon, Canon, they all make them. They're just $200 or $300 tops. The new Canon RF 80mm 1.8, I think you can get for like $180 right now. It's a fantastic lens. That way you can experiment with getting the depth of field, the blurry background that we were talking about. And 50mm is a good overall millimeter, so it's not too tight and it's not too short, and it works out pretty good, and it's cheap. So 50mm 1.8 is what I highly suggest. Do I need to shoot in RAW? Well, if you're a professional photographer, 99% of you are shooting in RAW. If you're a beginner, you can shoot in JPEG, but I would still recommend you shoot in JPEG and RAW, because later, once you learn to use RAW, you'll be able to go back and access your pictures. If you're shooting everything in JPEG, you won't be able to go back and have as much leeway over your images as if you didn't capture them in RAW to begin with. You don't have to know how to use camera RAW yet. Just set your camera to shoot RAW and JPEG right now. If all you know how to use is the JPEGs, use those, but save those RAW pictures, because eventually, once you figure out how to do RAW, you'll be able to go back to those images and make them look a whole lot better. So that's what I suggest, shoot both JPEG and RAW. Another question is, why do my pictures have a strange tint to them? Well, it's more than likely your white balance. Canon has an excellent white balance. Most manufacturers really do, but there's still going to be times where you might get a little bit yellow, a little bit magenta, and what's wrong with this? Well, it's your white balance. Get a gray card. I've got a video on this done maybe a month or two ago. You can probably just look under white balance and find it. And there's a lot of other photographers that have white balance videos. So you just want to manually set that white balance, and that'll get rid of the tints. Now, another advantage of shooting in RAW is you can go back and you can adjust that later. So that's yet again another advantage to shooting in RAW. But for now, do your white balance manually. Get your card, hit the button, and you'll be good to go. You'll see a big difference. If you want the eyes to pop in a picture, because people say, I just don't see how photographers get the eyes to jump out like they do. Well, we're focused on the eyes, and it's a dot focus. We don't do a wide range focus. We spot focus on the eyeball if it's a DSLR, and then we use flash to fill in the light. So if you between your flash and your focus, you should be able to get the eyes to pop. Now that will take some practice, especially if you're outside in the sun, and we've got videos on how to shoot outside in the sun. I think last week I released one. I did some pictures of my wife in the sun, and then I turned around, used the flash, let the sun behind her, and you can see her eyes popping in those pictures. So give that a shot and see if that works. Now the other one is, why is my subject underexposed? If your image is underexposed, you have too little light coming in the camera. Slow down your shutter speed. Drop it from maybe 125 to 160. I wouldn't recommend going below 160 handheld. You can turn your f-stop down. You can go from f4 to f2.8 or whatever your next step is lower, or you can raise your ISO. Raising your ISO usually needs to be your last resort, because especially older cameras, you will start getting noise the higher your ISO gets. Some of the new mirrorless cameras, you won't have that problem. But those are the reasons it's underexposed. And it's the same thing if your picture is overexposed. If it's bright and washed out, you got too much light coming in. So then you need to up your shutter speed, or turn your f-stop from 2.8 to 4 or 5.6 and go from there, or even drop your ISO. If you happen to be shooting around 1,000, drop it down to 400 or so, and that will stop the overexposure. So if you're over you're letting in too much light. If you're under, you need more light. Why are my pictures grainy? Most of the time, if you've got a modern day camera, it's because your ISO is set too high. You don't really want to go, like I've got a 30D that's probably almost 20 years old. I don't go above 400 on it ISO because it's just older technology. And then you've got like the Canon 6D. It's still older, but it's full frame, and I can take it up to 3600 and it'll be pretty good. Now I've also got a Canon R6. I can take it up to over 12,000, sometimes up to 25,000, and not get any grain. But if you're seeing grain in your pictures, you're probably shooting with a little bit older camera and you need to get that ISO lower. So work on that, getting your ISO lower. So by doing that, you're letting less light in. So you'll need to change your f-stop from maybe f4 to f2.8 or maybe down to 1.8. More light in so you don't have your ISO up so high you're getting grain. Or it could be you're cropped in too far. If you've got a great image, but yet you crop it in 400%, you'll start seeing grain based on the megapixels. Megapixels don't really mean as much as most people think they do. But if you're cropping in a picture, say 400%, and you've got a 20 megapixel camera, you're basically now working with a 5 megapixel camera. It's more than likely your ISO, but watch your cropping too, because that can cause grain. Do I need to shoot in manual mode? As a beginner, no, you do not. I would suggest shooting shutter priority or aperture priority. You can work your way to manual. There's no hurry. I've been shooting for almost, September will be 40 years. And I still occasionally at weddings will flip to a shutter priority or an aperture priority to get my bearings of what I'm at. I can look and see what the settings are in the camera, and then I'll flip back to manual. But sometimes things can get hectic, and you can be like, I just came in from the bright sun, now it's dark, I'm inside shooting this reception, what am I going to do? Quick solution, flip it over to aperture priority, set it down to 2.8 or 1.8, whatever your lens go to, look at what your shutter and your ISO is, and then you can go back to manual. But to begin with, don't worry about shooting in manual. Shoot shutter priority or aperture priority. If you're shooting shutter priority, look at the length of your lens. If you got a 50mm lens, make sure you're shooting at 1/60th of a second. If you're shooting a 100mm lens, make sure you're shooting at least 1/25th of a second, and even higher if you can. If you're shooting with a 100mm lens, try to go to 1/250th of a second, even if you have to raise your ISO a stop. After practice, you'll get some steady hands, but when you're starting, you'll have a little bit more shaky hands, so you want the ISO to be at least, or even better, double of what the millimeter of your lens is. So 50mm lens, go to 100 if you can. 100, go to 200 or 250, wherever. You get the point. If you're shooting 400mm, you need to at least go to 800. I would recommend a 1,000th of a second for that, because those long lenses, you will get some shake. Now, another question, this one's a little bit different. How do I get natural pictures of my kids? Well, what I suggest on that is let them play. Take them to a park, let them play. Don't try to pose them. Don't say, here, sit here and turn your head and smile and look at dad. Let them play and pretend like you're not even there. You will get the best pictures just following them around, of them having fun. They're coming down the slide. They got a big smile. Those are when you're going to get your best pictures. Don't try to force a smile on little kids, because it will not work. Believe me, it won't. I've been doing this long enough to know. Let them play. You follow them. You wait for the moment, and then you capture that moment when you can. 99% of the time, it does not work. If you say, Junior, go sit on that rock and give me a big smile, that's not the way to do it. Just follow while they're playing, and you'll get the best pictures you can imagine. And during that, set your camera on shutter priority. And if they're running back and forth, you want to be at least up to 1/200th of a second. That way you're not going to get any blur. So if you shoot shutter priority with 1/200th of a second, let the camera pick the f-stop and the ISO, and you've got that 1/200th of a second shutter speed, then all you have to do is wait for that right expression, and you're good to go. So again, thank you guys. I apologize for the background. I just want to thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry if the background is different than it usually is, but like I said, all of our equipment is involved in a shoot right now south of Atlanta. We've got multiple studios set up, so we're just having to go with this right now. But I wanted to get these Q&As out to you guys to kind of help you guys along as you're going. I know a lot of you are beginners. And please, guys, if you have questions of a shot, if your picture is blurry, underexposed, overexposed, shoot me an email. I will gladly look at the picture and help you figure out what's wrong. And I promise we'll get it fixed for you through communication. It won't be a problem. I don't charge. It's completely free. I've got, and as of September, will be 40 years experience. So shoot me an email, send me the picture, and I'll help you step by step. We'll get it taken care of. If we're helping you guys out, we'd really appreciate it if you hit the like and mostly hit that subscribe button. You guys have a good day. Thanks a lot.